So with that, I'm going to introduce our NYSERDA, Susanne DesRoches. Good job. Thanks. For being here, and I'm sorry I have to read this. So Susanne is NYSERDA's Senior Vice President of Clean and Resilient Buildings, leading the authority's work on building decarbonization and advancing programs and policies to deliver a carbon-neutral building stock. Before joining NYSERDA in April of 2022, she served as Regulatory Director for Energy Policy at the New York City Mayor's Office of Climate and Sustainability and the Mayor's Office of Climate Resiliency. Those are a lot of big words. While there, she was responsible for the city's energy policy and regulatory affairs at the local, state, and federal levels, and directed the city's policies and programs designed to adopt regional infrastructure systems to climate change, including electric, gas, and transportation systems at the city's efforts to transition to 100% clean electricity by 2040. It's pretty amazing. Ms. DesRoches led the city's long-term energy planning efforts, which centered on decarbonization while prioritizing a just, affordable energy transition for all New Yorkers. Now she's doing that at NYSERDA. Amazing. So without further ado,
Hey, everybody. Welcome to the second day. Okay, so there's a sock thing happening, which I was unaware of, but fortunately I am wearing that special sock, which you can't really see, but they have rabbits on them. So my tradition is that when I travel places, I buy a pair of socks as my own souvenir. So these are bunny socks from Ireland, which I went to with my mom last summer. So every time I travel, I get a sock, says socks, and then when I wear them, I'm like, oh, this reminds me of my trip to Ireland. So anyhow, that's my sock thing. No pressure, Congressman, when you come up next. So it's really great to be here. Thank you, NY-GEO, for having me. I'm excited to welcome you to the second day of events. Really also excited to check out what's happening behind you in the floor there. So, you know, NY-GEO is really critical to the clean energy transition, not only in New York State, but serves as a model for other places in the country and in the globe, right? The resources, the conferences, bringing everybody together, sharing knowledge is a really critical component to advancement of geothermal technologies, you know, across the state and across North America. You know, I know lots of you are familiar with what NYSERDA does. We support the adoption of clean energy technologies towards really a better environment, a better place for people to live and work. That is our goal. That's our mission. And we're 50 years this year. I'm excited to be at NYSERDA for its 50th anniversary and hope, you know, that you guys follow along with us as we celebrate that 50th anniversary. So I wanted to talk a little bit about what we're doing around the state to advance geothermal. So some of this you've probably heard about in sessions and panels. The first one I want to highlight is the Utility Thermal Energy Networks and Jobs Act, otherwise known as UTENJA, a really awesome acronym. And really what that act does is help support the development of larger scale thermal networks, right? So this is a bit nascent. There are lots of them that have been developed in the past, but as we work to transition off natural gas, we need other technologies that are at a community scale, that are at a neighborhood scale. You know, we are working building by building today, but we do need to get to a faster, greater scale. And this technology that you all are working with is one of the critical components of that. And that act has another component to it, which is equally important around how do we actually regulate and what are the policies that we need in order to expand these thermal energy networks. And so that process, and I know a lot of you are participating, putting in comments. I know some of that, and you heard in my bio, I spend a lot of time doing comments to regulatory proceedings. Could be a bit dry, also really exciting when you get into it. And, you know, we really we really value your participation in those arenas so we can hear from the industry, what does that policy landscape and regulatory landscape really need to do? So right now there are 11 projects from the UTENJA Act pilot pod projects that are being driven by the large utilities across the state that have been approved into design. So we're going to follow that and see how that grows in order to really promote these types of installations. The second program I want to highlight is the Community Heat Pump Systems program. That was really the first program we launched into this space. NYSERDA launched into this space in the early 2021, I believe. That program funded about 50 feasibility studies. It funded 12 design projects and 6 construction projects. And so what we wanted to get out of that program was to see what is the appetite out there in the world for this kind of work, right? What is the industry saying? Where do we see that growth? Where do we need to incentivize that market? 60% of those projects were single owner sites, so really large medical campuses, hospitals, colleges, multifamily complexes, that sort of kind of project. Plus, we had over 50% of them in disadvantaged communities, which was a really big goal of that particular program. And it set the groundwork for the program that we have in the market today that I also wanted to highlight. That is called the Large Scale Thermal Program. And what we do there is we cost share the design of single large buildings or multiple building projects. Again, we're focusing on those campus type projects because we saw a lot of interest in those in the market already. So what we want to do there is incentivize projects that can be replicated elsewhere, right? Again, we're looking to really incentivize these larger scale types of installations. And so we can show that they are doable, feasible, profitable, affordable, and that, we can grow those types of projects across the state. Most importantly, the third round of the funding is in the market now, and the deadline is at the end of July. Just want to pause there. So there is funding available. We want your projects. We want you to apply for this funding so we can see what's out there and we can make sure that those incentives get to these types of really exciting and innovative work. So I do want to note that there are folks from NYSERDA in the room that can answer questions about this program. Raise your hand there's Sue and Andrew and Donovan, Nylas, Scott. So we got lots of people here. If you're interested in this program, you have a question, please talk to us. We have other programs where we work to incentivize geothermal. FlexTech has been in the market a long time, and it's a technical services program with a cost share. We're happy to support early stage projects through FlexTech. We have the Empire Building Challenge, Empire Tech Prize. I'm not going to go through all of those, but my main point here is that those programs need to hear from you, right? We want feedback from the industry as we shape the programs as we have them today and as we see the future programs that we need to design. So come talk to us. You are our most important collaborator, and we really want your feedback. So I want to thank NY-GEO for having me today, and I really want to thank all of you for your collaboration. But before I introduce Congressman Tonko, I just want to say a couple of words and thank Donovan Gordon, who is in the audience today. And I'm embarrassing him totally, but I couldn't get off the stage without saying, Donovan has been really an important part of all of the work that we do at NYSERDA, and in particular, the geothermal and heat pump work. He, in his career at NYSERDA, has really worked very hard to advance this work across New York State and elsewhere. And he has been a pleasure to work with and is retiring later this year. This is his last NY-GEO conference as a NYSERDA employee. So I just wanted to say a big thank you to Donovan. So it is my sincere pleasure to introduce our keynote speaker, Congressman Paul Tonko. Representative Tonko has been a true champion for clean energy for decades. He was NYSERDA's president and CEO right before he was elected to Congress in 2008. He has served 9 terms representing New York's 20th Congressional District, which includes Saratoga Springs, where we are today, Albany, Amsterdam, Schenectady, and Troy. Representative Tonko serves on the Energy and Commerce Committee. He is the ranking member of the Energy and Commerce Subcommittee on the Environment and also serves on the Energy and Commerce Subcommittee on Energy and the Subcommittee on Oversight and Investigation. In this 119th Congress, Representative Tonko was selected to serve on the House Committee on the Budget. Very important role. He has many other activities that he does. He's a very busy man. We are super thrilled to have him today. From all of us, thank you for your public service. We appreciate being a champion of, that you're such a champion of clean energy. And please join me in welcoming Congressman Paul Tonko to the stage.
This was the first choice about that right there.
Well, good morning, everyone. And it's great to be with you. I have boring black socks on. I guess I should extend it into that colorful tone that we have this morning and say that my tie once was my socks, and it was converted. But thank you, one and all, for the kind invitation to be here. Thank you, Susanne, for that great intro, and proud to be part of the NYSERDA alumni family. And I look forward to the 50th anniversary celebration, and great to know that you're a sponsor of this great event. Thank you, John, for your invitation. Where did John go? He's back into his seat. Thank you for the kind invitation and for so much info feed that you brought my way with tours of your facility work, and appreciate your leadership with this organization, having been that president and leader. And thank you, Chris, for all the work as executive director with NY-GEO. And Ryan, thank you for the work that you bring our way and the info that is so critical in developing legislation. And let's hear it for those geo heat pumps too. Absolutely important. Well, this is an interesting budget year in the House of Representatives in Congress. And I'm happy to hear that you're encouraging people to sign petitions here, and take that a step further, take it home and encourage all the business community, the chambers, whatever, to write their representatives, to write leadership in the House and in the Senate. We need to preserve a lot of the activity that was very positive in the 117th session of Congress, which I'm going to mention. But I'm absolutely happy to be here because I see a lot of strength that is provided by the geothermal industry as it comes to a clean energy series of goals. And incredibly proud of the clean energy and environmental agenda that was enacted during the previous administration with President Biden. The Infrastructure Investment and Jobs Act, the Inflation Reduction Act, and the CHIPS and Science Act were a series of bills that are now an historic trio that we need to preserve. They were designed to allow the private sector, our state and local governments, our not-for-profits, our schools, and individuals to take part in and advantage of the global energy transition. And I know that a lot of work was done in interaction with the utilities, the electric utilities, and thank you, National Grid, my home utility. Great to work with the folks from that organization also. These laws are creating hundreds of thousands of jobs and enabling billions of dollars of clean energy investments all across the country. And millions of Americans are already benefiting directly. Just considering consumer-facing tax credits, over 3.4 million households have received $8 billion worth of tax incentives just last year for making clean energy and energy efficiency upgrades. That's an important statistic. More and more states were beginning to offer rebates for low and moderate income households to support energy efficiency and electrification of homes, and love the partnership we have with NYSERDA, as New York was the first state to launch its efforts for appliances and efficiency. School districts are receiving electric buses. Local governments are cleaning up brownfields. Water systems are removing lead pipes. The list goes on and on. And the goal of these types of policies was not only to protect public health and our climate, but also reshape our economy so that American clean energy industries are high-quality job creators for decades to come. I understand that people are rightfully concerned with the cost of living crisis, and that's obviously still on people's minds. They're paying more for their energy, they're paying more for their grocery bills, they're concerned about housing availability and costs, and the list goes on and on. I certainly want to advance policies and programs that will mitigate those costs, but I also know that failing to address climate change is indeed short-sighted and will cause us all to pay much more in the years ahead. So we are charged with, absolutely, we're charged as a generation of individuals to make certain that our planet, handed over to those next generations, will be in better stead. And this industry can make that happen too. We are seeing home insurance costs rise significantly due to the increased threats of flooding, of hurricanes and wildfires. We see it in the news routinely. And one study found that U.S. home values may decline by some $1.5 trillion by 2055 due to the impacts of climate change. So we have our work cut out for us. I believe geothermal can be an excellent solution to that challenge, to not only address climate change, but also to help those homes retain and increase their values. The Inflation Reduction Act is part of the solution and will provide significant savings for consumers. And most importantly, it included a long-term extension of energy tax incentives, which is critical to giving the certainty that the absolute certainty that's essential for schools and housing authorities and individual homeowners that will make major investments, such as opting for geothermal. Unfortunately, that multi-year stability is now becoming less certain. And this is occurring despite the mounting independent research that has found repealing the IRA's energy tax credits will have an immediate effect of raising people's energy bills. So we need to do this with public awareness that these are good efforts to hold down the cost of our energy. But President Trump and many Republicans in Congress have been clear that they want to end these incentives and use the money saved to pay for their plan to cut taxes, which will overwhelmingly benefit the highest income earners. This is all about lining the pockets of billionaires and huge corporations that don't pay a fair share of taxes. If we can't afford that, I say let's do the savings that have affected the great many of us, working families, middle-income America, those looking to ascend into the middle category that need these programs and need these assistances. And I fully acknowledge that the Biden administration's implementation of these tax incentives was far from perfect. They had to develop a lot of new rules that held back the release of the dollars, staffing levels that had to be addressed, and guidance for each and every updated credit. I worked closely with the Geothermal Exchange Organization in D.C. to try to get favorable interpretations of the law. For example, trying to ensure third-party ownership business models could be recognized for geothermal projects. But even if implementation had its issues, the credits gave us a strong foundation to grow the domestic geothermal industry, a platform that we need to build upon in the future. But today I'm worried that these credits are in real jeopardy. Next week, Congress will return to D.C. for 4 straight weeks of session. This will be a critical time for the Republicans' reconciliation bill, the process they are using and will use to enact their tax agenda. In the next few weeks, we expect committees will publish and begin to consider their portions of the overall package. They're going to be putting pen to paper, a critical time to raise your voice and encourage everyone to pay attention to the good that these credits and policies as initiatives in the legislative package that I discussed are to the overall economy and to the growth of sound-paying jobs. So as they begin that effort to put pen to paper, it will include efforts with the House Ways and Means Committee dealing with tax provisions. We know this committee has a lot on their plate. They are responsible for extending the individual income tax cuts from the first Trump administration's bill. President Trump has also called for ending taxes on tips and other new priorities, all of which we'll need to pay for. Many of those cuts will be unpaid for using budget gimmicks, but Republicans are still expecting to need to find revenue-raising offsets for a significant portion of these tax cuts. There has been a lot of press coverage over the proposed cuts to social safety net programs, areas like Medicaid and low-income food assistance programs, but the IRA's energy tax credits remain a significant potential pay-for. That means both the 25D residential energy credit and, of course, the commercial investment tax credit, Section 48A, could be at risk. I say hands off. Let's make certain we do something right here and save what was building the economy. As we go through time with the dollars coming out the door, you can feel the impact that these tax credits are having on job growth for sound-paying jobs. Let's not do something foolish to wreck our economy simply to line the pockets of those in the upper strata of the income levels. Of course, this is not an all-or-nothing proposition. Some Republicans have supported protecting some credits and repealing others. Others have suggested amending the credits rather than completely repealing them. My position is to oppose any changes or repeals to any of the IRA's provisions. But I know other clean energy industries are beginning to consider what types of changes they could best live with. Some of the reform ideas being floated by Republicans include requiring the use of domestic content, sunsetting the credits sooner, reducing incentive amounts, and other ways to reduce certain technologies' eligibility for these credits. All of these ideas would limit the use of these credits and result in additional federal revenues, which can be applied, therefore, to those tax cuts for the most wealthy Americans. I apologize if this has come across as overly negative. If these were easy solutions, I promised that I would be doing them. But I believe you deserve to hear an honest assessment, a frank approach to the state of our federal geothermal incentives. And right now, we're at a crucial moment in this process, and the outcome is far from settled. The good news is that there have been some congressional Republicans, about 24 publicly, including some in New York, that have urged their leadership not to repeal these credits. You need to reinforce that message in the name of those individuals. So if your business has a presence or develop projects in any of these New York Republican districts, I would strongly encourage you to reach out to their offices and tell them to protect those incentives that geothermal relies upon. Now is the time to advocate for yourselves and your industry, for our planet, for our communities, for job growth. One other issue I'm following is that of our federal agencies as witnessing a tremendous brain drain of talented public servants. Thousands of federal employees at the Department of Energy have taken either deferred resignation or voluntary early retirement because of the thirst to cut jobs in the federal government. This will have negative consequences, and this will inevitably impact the provision of funding for R&D, for demonstrations, and technical assistance. I think there'll be a number of professionals looking at developing in the early stages their career path and maybe skipping over serving in federal agencies simply because they won't see it as a secure opportunity. That would be a tragic brain drain, and it is a tragic brain drain as we lose a lot of this institutional memory that needs to be there at this moment of transformation in energy policy. Our new Secretary of Energy, Chris Wright, comes out of the oil and gas industry. He knows drilling, and he has had positive things to say about geothermal. So I'm hopeful that that may be a voice that we can utilize. That might be an area of potential bipartisan agreement over the next 4 years. But while the Secretary's interest and background may be encouraging, I'm expecting that we will see big cuts to the Building Technologies Office and other programs that support electrification in the President's 2026 budget request, which is expected to be released later this spring. Despite these concerns, one silver lining is that we are in New York State. Thank you for the work, NYSERDA, that you do. And as we saw during the first Trump administration, New York and other state governments stepped up and continued their commitments to clean energy despite changes at the federal government level. So hopefully, NYSERDA and our New York-based utilities will be able to continue to provide the incentives and regulatory direction necessary for building decarbonization and geothermal heat pump deployment to continue. Again, I am sorry for my somewhat negative outlook, but I hope that it will encourage you all to continue to use your voices, your strength, your experiences, your successes to help fight to protect all of these incentives. Nothing is settled, and I know members of Congress are responding to stories about investments of projects and jobs in their given districts. So again, thank you for the great work that you do. Thank you for your professionalism. Thank you for the talent, the innovation that is being produced. Let's work as a team together and say yes to progress, yes to decarbonization, yes to a stronger planet, and no to lining the pockets of billionaires that make this struggle a necessary struggle. I think it's unnecessary for us to go finding savings and scraping back tax incentives simply to do an agenda that is perhaps in this moment undoable. Let's go be positive.
Out.